Welcome into the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball podcast on the KSR Podcast Network, presented by our friends at BetMGM. I'm your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very excited to be bringing in from the bullpen, long-time friend of the show, Michael Moreno, brother of one Malachi Moreno and a washed-up has-been from Eastern Kentucky.
Yes. Thanks for having me, Jack.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Is that a fair descriptor?
It's a description, but fair, debatable.
So a lot of stuff going on. We're very excited to bring you on to talk about it, obviously timely with the NBA draft and your brother's part. There was one time we thought that he may be included in this draft, and then he decided at the withdrawal deadline that he would not be, at least for this go round, withdrawing and pulling out, coming back to Kentucky for a sophomore season. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the other draft news with Jaden Quaintance going number 20 to the San Antonio Spurs. Otega Oweh's big night tonight, where we are expecting him to get drafted. Very excited for him, and just kind of his story and what he's meant to Kentucky basketball, and getting his shot in the pros will be an absolute blast. Looking forward to talking about that. And then obviously fans want to know how practice is going at the Joe Kraft Center, and we're bringing on a guy who probably knows a thing or two about how things are going. We'll get some early feedback. I will share some of my intel. He will share some of his. We'll compare notes and do the whole thing on the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, Mike, what's going on, buddy? How you been?
Good, man. Good. Obviously busy, but good. Busy is good, man.
So we'll start with the big news of last night. Jaden Quaintance going number 20. There was a lot of talk and speculation that he was going to free fall, potentially out of the first round entirely. We know his story. We know he played 4 games at Kentucky. You got to experience firsthand what it was like to see Malachi battling him in practice for wasn't a lot of practice, but he got to do some of that. But being just behind the scenes with him, knowing his journey, knowing everything that he's been through, and just how difficult it was for him to get to this point. I reported last night that he is going to have to undergo a follow-up cleanup procedure on his knee. So all of the talk about, he's just, didn't want to play, he's Shaden Sharp 2.0. We finally have tangible evidence that the dude was hurt, is hurt, and it's still going to be a part of his basketball journey, unfortunately. But going to a franchise like the San Antonio Spurs, I don't think, for my money, he could have found a better option for him that won't be needing him from day one and can let him kind of go at his own pace. I'm very much looking forward to that fit. Mike, what did you think of Jaden number 20?
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm super excited for him. Super excited for his family. If you know anything about the Quaintance family, they're extremely tight-knit and extremely supportive of Jaden in his journey. They know, in a lot of families, you feel like there's a tendency to try and, I don't want to say give a fair shake, but to try and balance the level of expectation and excitement behind people. Like, they're very well aware that Jaden is very special. And Jaden is the type of kid that you rally around, and he loves his family equally. Everybody, this was an achievement for his family, not just for him. So extremely special in that regard to me. But like you said, no, the Spurs could not be more of an ideal fit, considering, coming off a finals appearance, a lot of young talent between Harper, Castle, Wemby, Vassell, former Cats in the mix as well with Keldon and De'Aaron Fox. Phenomenal fit. I like it for him because knowing he's got to have the secondary procedure, knowing it's been kind of an ongoing process, and it's been as tough of a toll mentally as it has physically for him. I feel like this is the ideal scenario because they have their, 1-of-1 with Wemby, right? And they happen to play the same position, so a lot less pressure. And 2, the whole idea of the free fall, that's awesome, the speculation of that. But a kid at 18 years old, 6'10", 7'5" wingspan, unbelievable athlete, unbelievable defensive instinct. Really hard for me to sit and think that there'd be a franchise out there that would pass on him just because of those intangibles. You can teach a lot of things, right? You can teach him how to shoot the ball. You can teach him how to handle it. You can teach him how to rotate on defense, but you can't teach that type of, God-given body, so to say. So super excited for him. I think he's super deserving. Unfortunate about the secondary procedure, but knowing that he's 18, teenagers recover faster than most when it comes to these things. And albeit he didn't recover as well from the first surgery, part of that was, the aggressive nature in which he was trying to return and play. And so running into that obstacle was obviously very, very tricky to navigate. But ultimately, like I said, super excited for him. Think it's a perfect fit for him. Think he's going to learn a ton. Ironically, Wemby's a vet to him. Wemby's only 22. But I mean, that type of age gap, you have to think that's senior to freshman.
That is wild.
When you think about that, like Wemby's played professionally, in France, and then now is on his third year in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a vet. And knowing what San Antonio is building, I think he is going to be a massive piece of it. No pun intended. I think Jaden Quaintance is a special player, and I think the credit he deserves, he's going to get in due time.
Yeah, I think the good news. So there was the bad news of the surgery itself that I've heard will keep him out potentially as long as 6 months. Which for any rookie that sucks. Nobody wants to basically have a glorified red shirt season, to begin your NBA, what you've been building up your whole life for and preparing for that moment, to then kind of have the rug ripped out from under you again after we just experienced that with year 2 at Kentucky. He wanted to play, but his body didn't allow him to. So it was, that part is frustrating. The 6-month timeline potentially is very frustrating, but I think big picture, the unbelievably good news of it is he got a second opinion with Dr. Riley Williams III, who actually did Paul George's knee back when he had his gruesome injury with Team USA in 2014, and restructured his knee and turned it into, allowing him to still be an all NBA talent at that point forward and continue his career after a long extended, absence, letting him be back to Paul George. He gave the second opinion, deemed it basically no long-term concerns whatsoever with his knee, that he's still going to be a 15-year pro. Physically, he's still, the freak of nature that we know him to be. Is just going to be a short-term setback for a long-term, serious comeback. So good news all around. Hate it for him in the short term, but it's not like he absolutely free fell on draft night. 20 is fine for him. San Antonio couldn't be a better spot for him, and long term his knee's gonna be great. So very, very excited for him and happy for him. But now it's about tonight. Otega Oweh. Just if you look at all the mock drafts, we've seen him as high as early 40s to as late as undrafted or maybe sneaking in with the last pick. Where do you think he goes? What number do you think he goes? And what would be just the ideal Otega Oweh fit for him as kind of this two-way defensive stopper, potentially a Lou Doherty kind of guy in the NBA?
Okay, so looking at the second round, first of all, let me go ahead and say this. Otega, to me, is draftable. Otega belongs in the NBA. I'm not going to say it's because he's the most talented guard on the board. I'm not going to say it's because he's a sniper. But what I am going to say is you're not going to find a guy who will play as hard as he will. You're not going to find a guy who's got, this chip on his shoulder like he's had for the past 2 years. We all know Otega Oweh was our guy last year, in all, aspects of the word. I think he met that expectation. I think he wore that, that heavy crown last year, and I think he embraced it even when it got difficult. But I think a guy like him, you fill your roster with guys like this. I'm not going to say he's ever going to be all NBA, but it wouldn't surprise me if he really cracks his way. Look at a guy like Jamal Shed, look at a guy like Haywood Highsmith, look at a guy like Jamal Cain, look at a guy like,
look at these McBride. Are we serious? You're pulling.
But you just have to look at some of these second round cases. You can go with the obvious, the Draymonds, the Jokic, the Ginobilis. Like, you can go with those, but no, Otega is who you fill your roster with. Now, I see him in a place like Miami, right? Just as far as fit to who he is. Do I think Miami? I don't know if Miami's got the 41st pick. Who knows, right? I pulled up the draft board just to be fully transparent. Miami would be a good fit. I think Orlando would be a good fit as well. They have a bunch of big guards that are going to have the ball in their hand, between Paolo and Franz. I think that's a great fit as far as from a defensive standpoint. Granted, he's going to have to continue to show improvement shooting the ball, but Ortega knows how to play basketball, man. I mean, it's let's not overcomplicate this here. Now, once you get in the second round, you want to look at trade value and you want to look at, fit to scheme. I think trade value with him, I mean, it's hit or miss. It just depends on what you need. But as far as fit to scheme, he's pretty plug and play. Whether it's playing in that Zoom style or that, pro style offense, whether it's being sort of an asset as far as off the ball, there's plenty of organizations who could use somebody like him. And the thing is, he's a worker, man. He'll continue to develop and grow. So I 100% expect Ortega to get drafted. I've always been a huge Ortega fan just because, like I said, the massive chip on the shoulder he plays with, and just his effort and his motor is unbelievably high. So, I'm excited for him, and, I'm biased, right? He's a cat. So you want him to go, for the sake of that. But I think he's, like I said, I personally, I would like him on the Magic, just from a look standpoint, because Suggs is good. But they need a little bit of depth at sort of that regular size guard position. So I would appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a long journey. There's some of the individual moments that he's had at Kentucky. Obviously, everybody knows the half court heave that saved Kentucky from a first round exit. Like, that's the encapsulates all of it. But he also has the SEC tournament game winner. He has Oklahoma game winner. I mean, just go down the list. He has hit big shot after big shot, massive individual performances in terms of stats, in terms of production, in terms of contributing to winning, in terms of the special moments that put him in just kind of all-time Kentucky territory. A guy that, for Mark Pope, I mean, I'd argue he's the face of the beginning of the Mark Pope era. I mean, Otega Owe is Mark Pope, and Mark Pope is Otega, at least through the first two seasons. So looking forward to draft night tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. Any other storylines you're monitoring tonight? Any other big sleepers that you're looking forward to? Any that jumped off the page at you last night that you're like, that's the steal of the draft? And then tonight, who do you think is going to be a potential steal that's going to fall?
Obviously, Malik Thomas. I think him falling is huge. I think he'll be a steal for sure. I look at him as first round talent, indefinitely. Henry Visar, was very surprised to see him fall off the board. And it's all about what teams need, right? But Visar was, I think, 18-8, shot the ball really well, and he's tremendous size. Him and Malcolm are the same size, 7.5 feet. So, between those two, I'm a huge fan of them both, as far as their games, and I think they both deserve a shot. I'd say they'll be one of the first few names to come off the board. Then as far as the end of the draft goes, I mean, there'll be plenty of people that sneak in there. There were so many withdrawals. I don't even know who all is still, down there. But if we're looking at some names, we've got, let's see. Bruce Thornton, would love to see where he lands. Was always a huge fan of his.
I like that one a lot, actually.
Massive fan of Bruce Thornton's. And then once you get lower into the guys that's like, in the 40s and 50s of who's left, Jerron Pierre, that's one that I'd love to see get picked up. I just think ability-wise, I don't know many people who have the ability he has. So, there's tons of players.
Some of the bigger names available: Baba Miller, Isaiah Evans, Dylan Mitchell, Richie Saunders. I think he's going to have some real long-term upside. Ryan Conwell, Braden Smith, Felix Akipara, Jacoby Gillespie, Trayvon Brazil, Ugana, former Cat Ugana Onyenso. He's a projected mid-second rounder. Jaden Bradley, winner of all winners. Yeah, there's a lot of talent here. Kadir Copeland, I think, is going to be nice at the end of the, probably toward the end of the draft. Tyler Nickel could be a nice little steal. Bryce Hopkins, speaking of former Cats, so there's a lot of talent still available on the board. It's a good draft. I really enjoyed last night and just the storylines. Production value sucked, man. I watched the ABC and it was just some of those couch conversations were just, they were so tough, man. They were so horrible. They were tough. All right, let's peel back the curtain on Malachi's experience before we get into the current Kentucky, how things are going right now. Just now that the dust has settled and draft night has come and gone, what was that like for you as a brother to kind of go through that process, go to the combine, conversations with Mark Pope, just some of the, give us some good stuff. Give us some of the juicy details of what it's like being a potential first round, the brother of a potential first round pick, going through the draft process, trying to figure out what's best for his future.
Yeah. So going through it, we kind of went in, like everybody has heard by now, we kind of went in with the expectation, hey, it's about learning, growing, getting some feedback, and figuring out what exactly it is. Because there was never really a world where we went into this season thinking, hey, your goal is to be a one and done. And the thing is that goal sounds kind of open-ended, but it really has a clear path, right? If he's a one and done, it's because he performed, he exceeded expectations, he proved he was ready, all the things. So, obviously with the season he had, all that, SEC all freshmen, like that's a great thing. Definitely, great recognition. I feel like it was deserved recognition, but ultimately, all SEC freshmen and NBA first round is two totally different worlds, right? So you look at the both of them. In hindsight, Darius Acuff going at the level he went, you share an awards team with him, you think, okay, I'm not so far off. But as we went through it, as he got down to Miami to start going through pre-draft, and then, as we started talking with his agent a ton and kind of getting the lay of the land there, it was, the need for the big was high. And as far as quality bigs goes, there was a bunch in at first. You look at the guys that got drafted last night, ultimately, Chris Senack, JQ, Hannah Steinbach, Adai Mara, Merez Johnson. You have Visar. You have Terrace Reed. I mean, you have tons of bigs that are in the draft. Now you look at the guys that returned that were in the draft at the very beginning. You had Mo Krivas. You had Ruben Chinyelu. You had Flory Badunga. You had all these bigs who had great seasons that were like, what, I'm declaring. Zubi Ejiofor. I mean, there's another. I mean, tons of bigs, as you can see. All right. Out goes Krivas. All right. Out goes Flory. I mean, you start to see names starting to withdraw, and you're like, okay, maybe there is a chance that, Malachi could squeak in. We'll see where he goes. Then you see his first workout was with the Knicks. And after the Knicks workout, there was a segment where they just shot and got shots up. And at the end of the workout, he 15 straight threes, made them. And, not to brag on, blind squirrels find nuts all the time. Like, I get it. But, for him to be able to do that after showing very little shooting potential last year, it opened some eyes and allowed him, like, okay, let's look at the pieces here. He's 19. All right. He's 7 feet tall, legitimate. Okay. He's a willing passer. He can be an offensive hub. He's a semi-good rim protector at that level. Generally really good rebounder. All the tools are there to have, the makeup of a high floor big. So obviously him shooting the ball like that and working out well definitely worked in his favor. And he worked out for, a few other teams, and the common theme was this kid's going to be a long-term pro. And so with that, we're like, okay, maybe our, framework of thinking needs to shift. Like, I think he might need to give this a shot here, because the teams that were calling, interested, that's all in the late 20s. There was really not lottery buzz. So it was never a matter of, hey, you're probably going to get picked 12th, 13th. Like, no, because if you get there at that point, in my opinion, you stay. You don't think twice. You stick. You work out. You don't worry about it. Okay. But with NIL, it's changed a ton. You have all these kids that are fringe lottery all the way down to 35 who are No question going back because schools are able to pay. Look at the SEC Player of the Year last year, right? Kids 21, 22 years old, very talented, 6'9", everything you want in an NBA prototypical wing. Goes back to Florida for a great sum of money. Alex Condon, Ruben Chinyelu, two probably first-round worthy bigs in the right draft class, go back for money, right? Braylon Mullins, elite shooter, was deemed one of, if not the best shooter in the draft. Goes back to UConn for another year. Everybody has their reasons for doing it. I'm not saying it's for the money, but I'm saying, look, you have guys that are well within position and well within their means to say, you know what, I'm going to give this NBA thing a shot. They're deciding to go back. It's just the reality we live in. That being said, Malachi getting a chance to obviously get a first round promise, like that's the ultimate goal. That's the desire. Not saying those didn't come. There was a floor was established though. And we had the opportunity to say, look, Malachi, you actually have the freedom to make a choice here. If you stay, probably gonna be a first round pick, man. Like probably. Is it guaranteed? No, things change all the time, but it's as close as you can get to a guarantee without them actually saying the word. So we felt good about that. And we said, look, man, as long as you have the opportunity to make this decision, you can't take it lightly. Take your time, finish your workouts, get through the combine. And everybody knows combine, he didn't measure that great, right? Size-wise, he's huge. We all knew that. But as far as his shooting, his wingspan, like I've told you personally, Jack, like I think the wingspan debate is silly when you get to a certain size because yes, you want guys with length, but if a dude is legitimately 7 feet tall and has a +1.5, +2 wingspan, like, oh man, he's only a +2. He's only got a 7'2" wingspan. Like how many dudes in the NBA got a 7'2" wingspan? Okay. And then how many of those guys are 7 feet tall? Like you're already in a limited category of players when you get to 7 feet. So, it becomes irrelevant. But the way he measured out was as expected. It wasn't anything crazy. And so for him to be able to have the choice still, even after that, teams were banking on his upside, as was Kentucky, right? I mean, you look at our roster makeup of this year, if we get Malachi back, we feel good about it. Like this is our guy, as far as our front court spearhead. So, ultimately going through the combine, going through all that, going through the feedback, and it can get stressful. Malachi had the freedom to make a choice, and we told him, hey, man, this is totally your thing. I can tell you all the reasons why you should stay. I can tell you all the reasons why you should go to the NBA. I'll do my best, but ultimately this is a decision for you to sit and pray about and think about. And, you got to figure out what's really, in your heart and in your mind, because if we can figure that out, then we can lay out a plan for your next 18 months of what that's going to look like, or next 12, I guess, in that theory. But we get to the point where, he's ready to make a decision and, talked it over. He prayed about it. And it was like, man, I really think that another year would suit me best. Knowing that there's some uncertainties that, hey, nothing is a guarantee. It's not a safe enough floor for me to bank on, waiting another month to say, hey, let me try and work out and work my way into the first round. I don't get to play any live games. I don't get to go head to anybody unless we're playing pickup. So I have a lot of skin in the game for somebody who doesn't have a guarantee. So ultimately it was, he wants to be at Kentucky. He wants to be a part of this. Special kid, man. It's something he's always wanted to do, is play at Kentucky. So, that's why we went into this whole situation saying, hey, we're going to enter the draft, maintaining eligibility. And if we come back to college, I'm not transferring. I'm not going anywhere. So, as we've mentioned so many times, you've got kids that are, oh, hey, market value. Oh, hey, let's hit the portal, see what we can get. Let's chase it. Like, Malachi's a loyal guy. He wants to build something. He wants to believe in something, and ultimately having the opportunity to play for Kentucky, for BBN, it means everything to him. And so coming back, it was definitely a decision made in comfort. It wasn't, done out of force, out of, necessity. It was a decision made in comfort. I'm comfortable making the decision that I've made, and I'm ready to continue to work my way towards my ultimate dream, which is obviously playing in the NBA. So
Mark Pope during that process said, like, I think he's going to be the best big in college basketball next year. We're supporting him for both of his dreams. We want him to win a national championship here and become the best college basketball player in the world here. But we also, understand that if the time is now, like, we're going to support him. I had heard on my end that, like, every conversation with Pope and Malachi up to that point was like, if now is the time. I know it kind of scared some Kentucky fans along the way that said, like, hey, we don't really have a backup plan at center right now, but we'll figure that part out. You got to figure your part out. If now is the time to go, you got to go.
Right.
But now that we're here with the conversation of best big in college basketball, All-American, those types of goals, how does he get there? Like, what were the things that the NBA team said that, like, hey, we believe in you as a future lottery pick in a weaker 27 draft, but in order to hit these benchmarks, in order to get to that point, here's what you got to do. What were those things?
So part of it was just continue to add strength. At 19 years old, you're not a man yet, right? You're not. You look at all the 19-year-olds you've seen go to the NBA and really succeed. Look at Giannis at 19, right? Giannis at 19 was very skinny. Was a product of a great and invested strength program, but nonetheless very skinny. So my opinion is you have to take this whole strength process really seriously. And you've got to think of ways to do it that is creative enough to keep you interested, because, for some people, they can't just sit and drink, the protein shakes and get under the bench bar and do all these things. Like, strength training looks different for everybody. You look at a guy like Jalen Duren when he came out of college. Jalen Duren looked like that as a 16-year-old, right? And so you're looking at pro-ready body. Like, to me, he's the pinnacle. That's how I've always felt, since I saw him for the first time at 17. I always thought, man, if there's ever a pro-ready body out of high school, that's it right there. The kid was just absolutely chiseled, and just seeing that. Malachi was obviously not there. Malachi's frame is good. Malachi's 245, 250 pounds. It was all there, but obviously adding strength, like, you've got to be, grown man strength is real, and you've got to have that once you get to the NBA. So obviously that was probably facet number one and the most primary of the feedback that we've got. And then two is just continuing to develop consistency across the board with, your offensive prowess, with your motor. We see in spurts, there's 15-year pro in your body right now. And then other times there's definitely still some work to be done here. We've got to raise that floor up to say, hey, we throw him out there, nothing is going to drop off. It's not that he's a superstar right now. He can be, but we've got to be able to throw him out there at 19 and say, look, if we're going to take a chance on this kid, and really put in time and make him, sort of our big of the future, you've got to be more consistent in that. So, and then, just the arbitrary things, hey, if you start to show some shooting potential, or you start to, continue to develop your ball skills a little more and dribble the ball some, and just things like that, right? Like, your typical, hey, let's work on getting better as a whole. But with him, it was primarily strength and consistency of demonstrating, hey, I can go in 8 or 9 minute segments. Hey, I can, raise my level of play throughout the year. I can continuously get better as far as, my shape, my wind, my endurance. So just things like that. And that's, if you look at Kentucky, there's a lot of parallels. Like, they're not breaking down some special game film, right? Like, we all watch the same game. If there's two holes that Malachi has had to work on and he put an emphasis into, it's strength and consistency. Because if he gets consistently performing at a high clip to where he can play those 7, 8, 9 minute segments at a time, then you're looking at a totally different player than from year one. So, it's nothing that we didn't know. It wasn't any surprise as to the feedback we received, but, just those conversations, they were encouraged by his ability. They were encouraged by his, his prowess as an offensive hub potentially. And two, they just think he's massive, right? He's got legitimate size. He's huge. Malachi is, as we all know, one of the biggest humans that we've had here in a long time. And, if he can add 10 pounds to himself if he can add that offensive consistency or that defensive consistency. We already know what kind of rebounder he is. We already know he's a fan favorite. Like, we know all these things. It's just now let's put everything together for once and for all. So
for me personally, watching the draft last night, and that number 9 pick by the Dallas Mavericks, with good little Dusty May sprinkle there with Morez Johnson, all I thought about was exactly 1 year ago today, maybe. I don't know if it was maybe today we were in Colorado Springs, but that head-to-head battle between Morez and Malachi, where, that was still in the midst of like everybody just assuming that Malachi was a project big and he's going to come in and play 8-10 minutes. Like, anything that he can give you is icing on the cake, but you're building up for year 2 with him, and then he goes on to have the season that we did. But the moment that it flipped for me was that head-to-head battle with Morez, where Morez got the best of him big picture, but it was close enough, and we just seen Morez competing as a freshman to say, well, man, like, if he's already competing at this level against a guy who's a high major player entering year 2 in college, then maybe Malachi can be in position to do that. And fast forward, Morez then was where Malachi is right now, the same summer, going into what we hope to be the exact same lottery breakthrough, where maybe this time next year, Malachi's shaking the commissioner's hand at number 9 in their green room. So it'll be a lot of fun. Looking forward to that. Cool, awesome insight there from one Michael Moreno. Real quickly before we transition into current team, how things are going in the summer and all that, a quick message from our friends at BetMGM. Got a good read on how the action will play out on the pitch. Grab this Boost token, build your world's game parlay, and make every match unforgettable. Activate this parlay Boost token on any world's game parlay, and you'll receive a bigger payout if your parlay wins. And then for Thursday, when the U.S. scores, you can too win a share of $500,000 in bonus bets for every U.S. goal. Place a $5 or more pre-match bet on any World's Game match in which the U.S. is playing, and apply your Goal Rush token. They'll win a share of $500,000 in bonus bets for every goal scored by the U.S. in the match, and then the bonus bets will be split among the all eligible winners after the match. So appreciate our friends at BetMGM. U.S. a slight favorite tomorrow before taking on Turkey. Mike, I know you're a big time World Cup fan. How are you feeling about the U.S.'s chances to just keep this momentum rolling?
Turkey's playing for pride now. We've got a few guys on a yellow card, so if we sit them tomorrow and we lose, I'm okay with it. I think obviously this is the best team we've ever had. In my experience, I'm not saying that Clint Dempsey wasn't the guy. I'm not saying that Landon Donovan couldn't play. Like, Tim Howard wasn't a great keeper. Like, those are some dudes, but this is probably the largest concentration of players we've had play in Europe, which is the pinnacle. I think we've got a great chance. And being on home soil, you're starting to see, like, I argue with my coworkers all the time, like the fanship of soccer is the best part, because you see these people, how much pride they take in it. And then it goes to a whole nother level when you get to the World Cup. I mean, Scottish fans drinking Boston out of beer, the Netherlands, every city they play in, they have the orange bus, and they walk through the city downtown to the stadium. I mean, you look at the Japanese fans in Dallas, it's a sellout crowd, them in the Netherlands playing, and they clean the stadium afterwards. The German fan trekking America on Twitter, Freddie. Like, you just see, how these people are starting to appreciate America for what it is. And two, I think the World Cup, last time it was here in the U.S., the MLS started. So I think we're due for another big boom, and I wouldn't complain at all. Soccer is a great sport. But yeah, I think the U.S. can keep the momentum. I really do. It's looking good for them, and we need, obviously, a favorable draw. But I'd be extremely proud to see us in the quarters. Extremely, extremely proud. If we somehow made it to the semis, I would be even further appalled. I mean, seriously, it would be absolutely unbelievable to see them playing in the semis in mid-July. So, we never say never. Obviously, we're not one of the world powers, but never say never. So we'll see.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's get into the good stuff. Why our listeners came here, and we get it. It's a summer, so you guys want to know how things are going. Who are the standouts? Who are the MVPs? Oh, this guy isn't good enough yet. This guy's a bust. This guy is, lighting the world on fire, and he's out working everybody. Like, it's just, it's summer. It's time for gossip. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to gossip here on the Sources A podcast in this little matinee edition here on Wednesday early afternoon. So first wave of intel, Mike, I'd heard Justin McBride was actually like day one MVP, came out looking with something to prove, ran circles around everybody. Just awesome stuff for a guy that I think fans liked and viewed as a fan favorite, but never really thought as a top level contributor. So I think definitely kind of set the tone with everybody there. Heard good things about the backcourt, that they're kind of living up to the hype. And I'd actually heard that Milan Momcilovic was struggling quite a bit, just finding his rhythm and all that. So that was day one intel. Transition into the week-long intel, just the first kind of, here's the first real sample size of how these guys are playing. Zoom Diallo kind of taking command of the offense as PG1, keys to the offense, just knows how to turn the corner, a bully, a bulldog, getting downhill, getting 2 feet in the paint, great creator, passing ability, just kind of making very good decisions as PG1. But man, Alex Wilkins right there as a guy who's just nipping on his heels, and just a perfect 1-2 punch compliment there in the backcourt, that there was so much talk and concern about whether he would be able to make the jump from Furman playing SEC basketball, and the early returns are very, very positive about him. I'd heard that those are kind of the 1A, 1B MVPs. You may have something to say, a counter or whatever, but heard from there, Malachi and Milan Momcilovic being kind of the 2A, 2B right there behind the second tier. Very productive, doing good things. Malachi, offense running, as you said, a hub, the offense running through him, kind of getting back to that Amari Williams role, and really letting things run through him. Then Milan Momcilovic finally just being a steady Eddie, just letting the shots fall, trying to get the volume up. I think that's kind of some of the early concerns, is like same thing that we dealt with Kobe Brea early on. It's like, why is this dude not getting 10 attempts per game? We love that he's, going 3 of 6, but why can we not make that 5 of 10? So I think we're seeing some similar things there with Milan Momcilovic, but he's slowly but surely found his groove. And they just Ousmane Ndiaye, maybe not being a superstar early, not turning heads is like this, whoa, he is a game-changing talent, but producing enough to suggest that he's further along right now at this stage than Andrea Jelic was in August when he arrived on campus this time last year, and having a 2-month head start on Andrea Jelic. So definitely, if Andrea found his way into the starting lineup as a starting 4, definitely gives you optimism that Ousmane can be that guy. So that's what I had to say, and what I have heard on my end. How stupid am I? How wrong am I? All of those things based on what you have heard from, I'm sure you, not just Malachi, but I'm sure you've got a couple of moles in there that are willing to talk.
So words of Malachi I will share. First day that they played pickup together before they started, once that weekend they all moved in, that first day he said, Mike, we're going to be really good. He said, we've got a lot of dudes this year. So guys that can really hoop. And to me, I think that's what you miss when you get into a team who's very system oriented. You don't often see those hoopers anymore, right? Like, I think the things that you miss when you get into a one singular unit type team is, when it breaks down, who do you call, right? And I think now we've got a surplus of them. Right. So, Malachi sharing that with me, saying, hey, we're going to be really good because of the, just the amount of hoopers that we have. Like, there's just some guys that are built to score. There's some guys that are built to run. There's some guys that are built to just play a part. Like, I don't get overwhelmed by those type of comments, because I know that, we have a good coaching staff who's going to be able to build a cohesive unit. And they had a vision when building this, right? It wasn't like, hey, man, he averaged 17, he averaged 18, he averaged 16, he averaged 14. let's put them all together and see what happens. Like, no, like there's a reason that you go after who you go after. And while we may not always understand it, that's why we're over here and that's why they're in the war room, right? So that's sort of the mentality that I try to have going to it. But no, I'd say your intel, from what I know, pretty spot on. And I think
there we go.
The thing with the two guards is both of them are gonna, work out the kinks over time, right? Like this is a new setting for them. This is a new ground for them. I know Zoom played at Prolific Prep. I know Zoom has been at Washington. Like I know that they've had great teammates in the past, but obviously once you get comfortable, the older you get, you realize you build a habit. It's hard to break it, right? So you look at Zoom getting to a point where he's primarily running the show. Like I know Washington had Mandequit last year. I know Washington had Wesley Yates and Desmond Claude, and I know a few of those guys were hurt. Hannes Steinbach, like there was star power. The Frank Kepnong. I mean, you've had dudes in the program who warrant attention and time on the ball, and Zoom was the head of that. So same with Wilkins. Wilkins is at Furman. I actually was sitting there with my wife watching the practice highlights the other day that came out, and she happened to look over in the first clip and saw Malachi. She was like, "Who is that? It looks like Jasper." And it was Wilkins shooting his turnaround jumper. And I said, I mean, at first glance, it's funny you say that because the long hair, the lanky, skinny 6'5" frame, like you see it. And I said, what you see with the two of them is you see Wilkins coming off a season where, man, he had the green light. He was the guy on offense. He got a lot of ISO, had an extreme lob threat, and Cooper Bowser with him. A guy that's oozing with confidence, right? And I think that's what we need, to have a guy like that, and so 1A, 1B, like these dudes are going to go head to head all summer, compete with each other. And they're going to learn to play with one another as well. Like that's I think the key here is where there's only one basketball, there's going to be times where, hey, you rock out. No, you rock out this time. Like, it's going to be, hey, let's put you in this ball screen. Oh no, hey, let's get you coming off the pin down. You're hot. Like it's going to be that type of scenario, in my eyes, would be probably the most beneficial. Is there's going to be times where Wilkins is humming. There's going to be time where they've got nobody to stay in front of Zoom going downhill. But let's, while we're talking about the point guards, let's not forget Mason Williams. Okay.
Ooh, good stuff on that one.
Mason Williams, his interview, you listen to the kid, he's well-spoken. You tell he's a coach's kid. You can tell he's had some cerebral development in that regard. Yeah. So you look at just thin, but comfortable, confident. Malachi stood him up, but you look at somebody at 6'5", you attack someone's body. Doesn't matter how big they are, you can create space. And then like you said, Justin McBride, one of the early guys, like the kid plays so hard, man. Got an unbelievable motor. And look, I mean, he's 6'7", right? But he's played the floor at every stop. You look at Milan raising up, sticking it, like that's going to come in time. He's just been in a system for a while.
There's your boy.
And Malachi, like that's what you hope to see. You hope to see him every time running down the lane, like dunk on people, like raise up. You got to finish, either foul me or finish. Like that should be your rule. Foul me or finish. So if he can do that, and I mean, here's a telling thing too. Like you look at that last clip of Malachi, like we know Mikhail McLean's the energy guy. If Mikhail's not celebrating, right, that means one of two things. That means, look, Malachi needs to do it again and get his head out of his butt, or Malachi's expected to do that now, and we're going to set the bar, right? We're going to set the bar right here, like dunk on people. Like I said, Mikhail's a big energy guy, so that sort of scenario, like boom, catch a lob, dunk, great. We've got great passers. We didn't see that much of that last year, as far as trying to get bigs in for lobs. But Mason pushing, attacking the body, boom, finish. Mikhail, all right, boom. Now he's coaching again. Mikhail's a big energy guy. So part of that is, hey, Malachi, you either need to do that more or you need to get your head out of your butt, right? So, those two things I think is primarily my takeaways from the clips, is looking at, we featured a bunch of guys who we've heard good things about. And if you really get into the depths of it, like Mason Williams got down the court in 4 dribbles right there, and he's pushing the ball. Well, Malachi took the ball out and is still right on pace with him to come in as the trail, follow him in, put back dunk, or get a, right down Main Street. Right, we're moving the ball, shooting the ball. Milan looks good. Like, it just takes time, right? So for me, I think the amount of dudes that we have, they should push each other. They should put pressure on one another. Like, there needs to be moments where they're all getting reports of, gosh, he was bad today. And it's not because he played bad, but it's because, man, he's not dominant like he was. Like, Milan couldn't get a shot off. Well, Milan is also borderline 6'9". If he's not getting a shot off, somebody's either smothering or we're, not getting into him in the pockets. If Malachi's not finishing at the rim, maybe we have good rim protection. Or, like I said, Malachi's you got to do better, right? So, like, there's so many trade-offs to this, and I think practice intel, it gets hard. It's like the old stat, I forgot what coach it was, but talking about how teams in the league were 500 during conference play. Like, that's kind of how I see some of this practice stuff go, is like there's going to be a trade-off. If Zoom Diallo is really good one day and Alex Wilkins isn't, I mean, sometimes we got to think about how that goes hand in hand, right? Like, they went against each other. Like, Zoom got the best of them today. The next day, oh, man, Zoom Diallo really off his game today. Alex Wilkins was killing. Well, he got the best of them. They're playing against each other, right? Like, that's going to happen. So we're going to hear a lot of that in the summertime, and it's going to be, here we go, another long season of this, inconsistency. Like, you want dudes to just be flat better by the end of the summer, right? So, but then beyond that, just the amount of guys that are getting sort of mentioned in these intel pieces, I think should be encouraging. The amount of positive feedback we're getting with some of these dudes. Malachi shared with me, Usman is a lot taller, than he thought, right? He's legitimately 6'11", and he was 7 feet. I mean, and he runs like a deer. So that's what separates him, is he just runs the floor well. He can finish and transition. Like, I mean, how often do you see guys at that size that can do that, right? And then as far as set shooting, I myself went into the Craft Center last week, and just watching the guys shoot it, this is a manager's dream. These guys are shooting, and it's just, hey, stand under the rim, man. Like, it just drops. So it's like, if guys are shooting like that, making 70% of their threes uncontested, like, I know it's just workouts, and I know that's what you need to do, but man, the more you see go in, the confidence creeps up slowly. I mean, you look at Milan. If we look at his clips from last year, I bet you could put together a montage of ones that you wouldn't allow anybody else to take, that you feel comfortable with him taking. And it's because he made so many. So the more you see go in, the better it gets. And the more that we can surround Milan with shooters, surround Malachi with shooters, surround Zoom with shooters, the more that we can do that, the better off we're going to be, because ultimately that takes pressure off of one another. So having this amount of dudes and having this amount of positive feedback this early, I'll take it.
I like this question from Western Robin. Comparisons Pope made of McBride to Julius Randle, and add in Alex Wilkins to SGA. Obviously, we're in this hyperbole land, and everybody, last year it was the Ferrari, and we're compared to the 96 teams. So, like, we have to take everything with a grain of salt, and not just know that there's nuance with all of these things. Like, maybe one day a player looks like a superstar, and the next he does. Like, just because one thing is said one day doesn't make it permanently true, or one thing, vice versa. So don't go crazy over those comments, fan base. Like, I know that they're, when Alex Wilkins has a game where he goes 2 of 12, like, fans are going, oh, I thought he was SGA. Like, just get you're missing the vibe part. He said that he gives SGA vibes, just like Justin McBride. It's going to be the same with a Julius Randle vibe. So with that, caveat there, what did you make of Pope's comments with those two, and what you've heard of for those two in particular?
Well, I think the mentality is everybody remembers Shea Alexander getting back-to-back MVPs this year more than they do remember what he was as a freshman at Kentucky, right? If everybody remembers, he didn't start the year. He wasn't a superstar to start the year. He was always very talented, and his story is great. His coach reaching out to Kentucky staff to try and get recruited. That to me is unbelievable. How many kids welcome that? How many kids ask for that? And how many kids stand on it? then take us to an SEC championship, and then go to the league, then get traded to the Thunder, win their first championship, and win 2 MVPs and a Finals MVP. I mean, how many? We don't have any of those, right? So, if we're looking at SGA vibes, like the version of SGA that we're talking about, there is a freaking vast array of versions of SGA we're looking at. So if we're looking at SGA right now, woo, I'll take it, right? But if we're looking at SGA while he's at Kentucky, like you'll still take it. It just remember
Still a lottery pick.
He didn't come on strong from game one on. You could just tell it was always there. And then with McBride talking about Julius Randle, like Julius Randle was a double-double in the SEC. Probably arguably my favorite player in the Cal era. Just because, toughness. He just plays so hard. He gets the little shimmy to that left. I vividly remember the overtime game against Johnny O'Brien and LSU and just watching Julius down the stretch, him and O'Brien just battle. You look at him down the stretch in the tournament, like the Harrison twins hit the big shots, but it was Julius who put us on his back to get there. So, McBride, he's not quite 6'9", right? Like he's not quite 260 or 250, whatever Julius was at the time. But as far as the motor goes, as far as, the body build, like the thing about Justin McBride is special, I think, early on is he's the hardest playing dude. Like if you can set the tone as the hardest playing dude, you carve out a spot for yourself, right? And so having Julius around, as far as comparison goes, like I would be thoroughly pleased as if I was Justin. I'd be thoroughly pleased if I was BBM just because of the respect that warrants, right? So,
yeah, the one thing that I have heard on Justin after his super start was like little trigger happy at times. Like definitely somebody who once he kind of gets into his zone, there are times that you go, all right, let's reel it in a little bit. So that is going to be something that I think that we'll be hearing quite a bit of. But going back to Mason Williams and the good initial intel and the wave of confidence in him as just a backup point guard that has been so problematic for this program for the last 2 years under Pope, to identify a guy that knows what his role is, to say, hey, we are bringing you in 4-star number 129 in your high school class or whatever he ended up finishing as, but we are signing you up for this very specific role that we have been missing desperately over the last 2 years. Can you fill it? And for him to step in and exceed those kind of expectations day one and say, yeah, this might not be just a Dominique Hawkins kind of vibe where if he can give you 5 good minutes, go and make the shot, go and get the defensive stop, go and get the rebound, that we kind of view Dominique Hawkins as. If he can be kind of a stable early rotation guy, what does that do for everything else, Mike? Like how are you taking this initial wave of good news on Mason Williams for being probably ahead of schedule for where most 4-star freshmen should be at this stage?
Gives you a different look, right? I remember, I played 5 years in college, and I remember every time I saw freshmen come across a scouting report, if he's getting in the rotation, he's probably talented, but he's a freshman. I can get up under him. I can pressure him. I can do all these things. Everybody licks their chops when they see a freshman on there. And the thing is, if he's ahead of schedule, getting that separate look, that's going to be good not only for him, but it's going to be good for everybody else, because now if he's ready, I think what it does is it pushes Zoom and Alex to be, top as far as their condition, right? Like they've got to be on it every day, because if not, Mason Williams is right there. He's waiting. He's ready, and he knows that ultimately I was signed up for this so I could be a value piece here and a rotational piece here, and it may evolve into more, it may not, I don't know. But this could be the first sign of like true development of a point guard in our system. Freshman coming in, we first 2 years, who did we bank on, right? Lamont Butler, Kirk Creesa, which is grad seniors or last year guys, and Jalen Lowe, who ultimately we didn't get to experience. He was very, very talented, but being hurt obviously hurt him and hurt our team. So we didn't get a chance to really say, hey, we've developed a point guard here. We've developed this is the first guy. And 2, knowing he's under the tutelage of 2 all-conference guards coming into Kentucky, that's only going to make him better. But him being who he is, understanding, the concept of being this freshman value point guard, man, what a life that, Milan and Malachi and Ooze and Frank and, all these guys are going to have. Trent. I mean, Jerome, all you got to do is say, look, man, like, you can put your impression on this kid. And this is where you should see leaders emerge is, he might be a leader himself, right? But this is where you see somebody take him under their wing and say, look, man, this is how we do things. This is what we need you to do. No shame in being this guy, right? This guy got paid a ton of money. This guy is on our staff and he's your dad. He was that guy for LeBron for a while. And you look, he was an all-star. It wasn't because he was a slouch, but it's because he can accept that from time to time. All-stars, the only all-stars you can think of that were just that guy for somebody else, you look at the Hawks when they were the best team in the East, and you look at guys like Mo Williams, guys like Draymond. Like, these are some of the best basketball players in the history of the game. Like, Mason understands that, like, he can epitomize what it means to be a value player. And I was talking with somebody earlier today. Nobody takes pride in just being that guy anymore, right? Nobody takes pride in being a star in their role. It's, if I can't be a superstar, there's no place for this for me. And I couldn't disagree with that more. There's superstars in every role. There's tons of Jay Crowders. There's very few LeBrons. There's tons of Drew Holidays, which not really, but there's tons of guys who will accept that. Kevon Looney, he was a monster in high school. McDonald's All-American, goes to the Warriors, wins rings, gets paid a ton, and he is what? An elite offensive rebounder. He gets Steph open. Like, he accepted that, and you saw what happened, right? Kawhi had to be that early in his career. Blossomed, for sure. But you just look at guys who are really good at supporting, the deemed star on the roster. A lot of times you start to see how valued they are as stars themselves. So, over time, we'll see it. And over time, I think Mason Williams will realize what this year of his career did for him. We succeed, right? He's going to make it. He's going to be fine. So
I love it. Quick message from our new friends at ZenAI. ZenAI is the home of vibecasting, a new way to capture and share conversations. It helps anyone turn a conversation into something worth sharing. A podcast, a reel, or a TikTok with no production skills required. Hit record on your phone, have a real conversation, and ZenAI's AI producer handles the rest. Cleanup, clips, all of it, that simple. Right now, as ZenAI is paying new vibecasters to make their first sportscast about their favorite team go live during the game, you record your takes after, bring your own co-host, or find one in ZenAI's network. ZenAI is currently an invite-only beta, so head to zen.ai to join the waitlist, or check out our show notes for the link. Appreciate our new friends at ZenAI. We'll wrap up with this. Last show I think we did on Sources Say, I think we had Zach on, was the right after the Nikola Kusturica just mayhem. I think last Tuesday was when it was a done deal, Holyfield to Kentucky. Kentucky had already gotten it locked up. They'd agreed to terms on money and the 2-year, all of those things. And that ended up not being the case, unfortunately, where we got a little bit of some funny business with the agent of wanting to drive prices up and all of just, you've been in there, you've been in the weeds with some of this stuff, how the behind the scenes of all that goes. But Kentucky, through all of that, not the done deal that it was hoped to be, but still in the mix alongside the likes of UCLA, Michigan, Gonzaga was in the mix, Arizona, go down the list. There's he's the future top 10 draft pick in 2028. So, for those reasons, he's the intrigue is there and the money is there and all of those conversations that come with it. But as the time has gone on, we obviously have the big bombshell news that Dusty May is out. New changing of the guard at Michigan, just months removed from winning a national championship. Dusty was the full court press guy on Nikola Kusturica's recruitment. That obviously throws a wrench into those plans. UCLA kind of looming as this secret kind of dark horse with some international ties. And I'd heard on my end that the family actually likes Mick Cronin. I know that's kind of a polarizing thing to say in today's day and age, but there was a, I think just the Serbian approach in the MFer to Mick Cronin, I think aligned with a lot of what they liked with kind of just the Serbian basketball coaching style. So those things being said, Kentucky, haven't heard a ton with Kentucky here recently, but what was your take as all of that was unfolding, Mike? Did you think that Kentucky needed another piece, knowing that he's kind of a, year 2 is the superstar money year for him. Year 1, you kind of just get the icing on the cake. Whatever he can give you would be awesome while you're building and developing for year 2. Did you think Kentucky needed him? Did you not? Are you still hoping Kentucky, ramps up its pursuit? I think that with Michigan, their coaching change, I definitely think that at least resets the deck temporarily. I don't think it's going to prolong his recruitment too much longer, but definitely gives other schools a say so and some time to make a move if they choose to, because Michigan was in deep with that one. So your take on Kentucky's pursuit of Nikola Kusturica?
Knowing that he is, I've heard people go as far as saying he's the most talented prospect internationally on the planet. What that does for me, you're looking, it's up against C.J. Rosser, Marcus Spears, Beckham Black, like he's in that draft class with, Joaquin Boomty, like, it's a very, very talented class. And, I'm almost 10 years removed from high school, so now I feel like an unk for sure. But a kid like him, my perfect roster makeup in an ideal sense is you get a playmaking guard, you get a big guard, you get 2 7-footers, and then you fill the rest of your roster with, jumbo wings from 6'5" to 6'9" that can do a lot of different things, right? Like, if you look at our roster right now, Cam Williams, Braden Hawthorne, Milan Momcilovic, Justin McBride, Trent Noah. I don't think I'm missing anybody else as far as like those that wing perimeter position. You look at all of them, and they're all different. You don't see anybody there that's a duplicate of another. You need to fill your roster, and I don't think we have a guy that is Nikola Kusturica, right? We have an exceptional amount of talent. We have enough talent to succeed. It doesn't hurt to get a guy like this, but as we said on my first Sources Say show, this was back in December of this year, adding a player at the break can be difficult. This is the time if you're going to add a guy. You're in the middle of week 2 of summer access, right? So you're going to add a guy, great. Like at this point, but the expectation was I'm going to get this amount of time and I'm going to get this opportunity. I'm going to get well, buddy, you haven't earned it yet. In December, we've already played games. Like we've already ran, we've already conditioned, we've already bled and sweat and taken the plane rides. And we've already done all these things. We went through a semester of class, those kind of things. You have to look at morale of a team. I think this early would be okay. And the thing is, too, with a guy this talented and this highly regarded, highly touted, you want to have somebody like him in the mix simply because having a top 10 potential draft pick on your roster to go alongside Ryan Hampton next year, and then whatever else you're able to retain, plus the portal, plus, maybe Marcus Spears, maybe Nasir Anderson, maybe Beckham Black. You throw out all these guys, you might be able to find yourself in the mix to say, hey, I'm excited about this roster, but this is building blocks, man. And if Nikola Kusturica can learn my system in 8 to 10 months, he goes back overseas for the summer or goes back for the spring, comes back, and is absolutely ready and humming, then I've got him plus Ryan Hampton. That in and of itself is a freaking great core to start that 27-28 season. So, knowing that he's a 2-year player at minimum and knowing you got to do what it takes to keep him, man, is it important to get him if you can. If you can't, I hate it. Because, you want to get a kid, and I'm not really willing to sit and look through thousands of Mark Pope whiff posts and, because I just think it's we go after 30, 40 kids in the portal, we can only take 15. So even if we choose not to pursue them, it's still with this, with that, missed on him, mishandled this, misjudged the recruitment. Like, guys, we piece together a team here that ultimately we believe can win games and can succeed. We did it like this for a reason. Did we hit on every single player we wanted? No, it's natural. You won't, especially in this day and age. I'm sorry that, there's certain teams that will value a kid as a 1 or as a 2 that you'd value as your 5th or 6th guy, just because out of necessity, that's what they need. So that being said, I think getting Nikola Kirishirka would be a great thing. I think it would help our roster a ton. I think it would make us, go from that 20 to 25 range to that 8 to 13 range, just because we have the star power now and resources matter. If you go to you look at the old wars in the Bible, right? Like you'll have the 30 men versus the 3,000 or whatever. And it's like, if you have a great assortment of 30 men plus God's favor, of course, and blessing, you're going to be fine. Like, outside looking in from a completely unbiased, uninformed lens, if you have this many stars on a team, you're going to think, well, they're going to find some way for it to work, right? It's not just going to be, only so many playing minutes, only so many times you can shoot the ball, no, having the resources. This is the world and NIL landscape. This is the world of the haves and the have-nots. Okay. If you have the funding, you have the room, you have the resources, you're in luck. If you don't, then of course you're going to be frustrated. Of course you might be a little jealous. Of course, all the things. But I think he's tremendous, and I think he's definitely a worthwhile addition. Do we need him? No. But I would say that about any player, right? Any player. You don't need one player. I don't think – I'll even go as unbiased as, Malachi's super important, but he goes to the draft. We're still going to find a way to win games. We're still going to find a way to put together a team. You don't need one guy, even as valuable as he could be to your cause. Saying you need him is shallow, in my opinion, as far as getting and being hung up on one player. Just because as a coach, as a team, as a program, you put players out there, plural players, that are there to win you games. And can he elevate your floor? Absolutely. That'd be great. But knowing what we have on our plate now, super pleased with what we have. And I think that it's a lot of, room for growth for our young guys, for Hawthorne, for Cam Williams, for Trent Noah, for guys like that who generally don't get the love or the notoriety or the recognition, but ultimately have the opportunity to grow and develop and be a part of this, because they're going to be great additions. There's going to come a time where they're all needed to win games. Early in Pope's career, it was Trent Noah who sparked the team in Knoxville and Ansley Almanor, right? You look at last year's team, it was Malachi who sparked us in against Mississippi State to bust that lead open, right? It was Jasper who sparked us in Knoxville, last year. Like, you think of all three of those guys, right? How many times would you have expected Trent, Ansley, Jasper, Malachi to really be like the defining factor, right? So ultimately, like I say, we don't need the guy, but gosh, would it be nice to have him.
Yeah, if I had to put my money on a school right now, it would be UCLA. I just think that they have positioned themselves very nicely through all of the noise. Like, they kind of just sat as Gonzaga was the leader, as Kentucky was the leader, as Michigan was the leader, and throwing more money and negative recruiting Pope and like all of the extra stuff. They've just kind of lingered in the background as this, hey, we'll just let the dust settle on this and we'll still be here. At the end of the day, we still have the international ties. We still have, guys that you like. We have a coach that you like, that you've connected, the family has connected to. Like, they've just positioned themselves really, really nicely. That, again, we also at this point last week thought that we were, trending and going to be landing this kid's signature. So with this recruitment in particular, I am definitely not going to be overly confident in anything until that kid signs with a school and arrives on a campus. So like, I'm just going to be a little bit more hands off with it and just say, hey, we're just going to let this thing play out. When I don't like funny business. I don't like being lied to. I don't like when, you feel like you're kind of being used in a game of chess and, as leverage. Like, it's just not, not my thing. So once you kind of feel those things, you go, okay, I'm going to, back off a little bit and just let things play out. And so we'll see what happens. But I would love the addition. I think as a talent, he is who he is. I mean, I think he's a bona fide top 10 guy, potentially even top 5. Every person, like, very rarely do you talk about a prospect to an international scout or an NBA scout, front office guy, opposing college coach, whatever, and you just hit from all areas of the basketball world and it just be a consensus. This dude is the goods. When you find one of those, because usually you find one guy that says, I love him, but there are other guys like, oh, I hate his guts. I think that he's, way overrated. Like, there's always polarizing prospects that just give totally different feedback. This was one where everybody, like, a total consensus, unanimous, he is the goods. If you can get him, put your hands on him. And I think that's why it's at least interesting with the Michigan ordeal, knowing that I think that they were in deep, but I do think that was a Dusty-led recruitment. And say what you want about Mike Boynton, like whether you believe in him or not at Michigan, like he wasn't going to go to Michigan to play for Mike Boynton. Like, that's just a reality. I mean, he was going to go and try to be a Daimara 2.0. Like, that was going to be the pitch. Can I be your next international superstar under Dusty May? So I don't want to say Michigan is out, but I think that has definitely thrown a wrench into their plans, and they're not expecting to land Nikola this point forward. So at least if you were wanting to throw your hat back in the mix, if you lost ground and you feel like you want to make up, this is the move. This is the path. But we'll see what happens with Pope and how he wants to address it. I feel like I know he's confident with the guys he has and the roster that he's built. He doesn't view it as a need. He views it as if I can land the equivalent of a top 5 recruit now for next season to pair with Ryan Hampton, of course I'm going to do that and say, all the people that said I couldn't recruit, now here are 2 guys that are, potential lottery picks in 2028. So we'll see what happens, and we will go from there. But until then, let's wrap this thing up, Mike. This was a lot of fun. I know you guys
had a blast.
You got a Dust Bowl tonight?
Dirt bowl.
That's what I meant.
Lexington is a dirt bowl, big dog. Yeah, a little dirt bowl action tonight. We'll see what happens. I'm excited. So,
what's going to be the stat line tonight?
Man, I don't like to make predictions just in case I do perform too well. You know what I'm saying? I'm just playing. But I'm looking probably like 12-10, 12-8. It's gonna be really hot outside, so I'm gonna try to slow down.
Oh, I love it. Stay healthy. Don't hurt yourself. Like, I know, you gotta protect the body. Once you get a little older, you gotta, you gotta stretch, you gotta ice, you gotta make sure you can't do the things that you could when you were a superstar of all superstars, one of the greatest, and for my money, the best to ever come through the Eastern Kentucky basketball program. Dude, so
I appreciate it, man. I hope you don't need that money, because I don't know how true that is. So.
Mike, it's been a blast, man. Appreciate you coming
on. Yes, sir.
On
absolutely.
Appreciate our sponsors, and appreciate everybody joining us on this matinee edition of Sources Say. So we'll have you on again soon. This is a lot of fun.
Sounds good, brother.
All right. See you guys next time. Go Cats.